ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवां भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखमात् भवेत्. We welcome to all our viewers and devotees in this Dharma Samvad. Very important topic we are taking today. Abuse. Yes. And particularly when it's come to the children. When we were studying in ashram with our Guruji used to tell us. When I was studying astrology that time, my astrology teacher used to tell me, okay, up to the age of the 10, the no planet can affect to the child. Up to the age of the 10. And right up to now, even someone asked me to see the planet of the 5-year-old, 6-year-old. I says, no need. But even the planets understands. The children are innocent. What happened to our humans? What has changed our human mind? Why we are becoming so greedy? Why we are not even thinking about 40-year-old, 50-year-old person can't think about who is dealing with it. 5-year-old, 7-year-old children are being abused. We need to change. Our human mind need to change. We need to be understand. This 16 days of activism program introduced by the government. And we always say there is no smoke without the fire. It means that there is something not right we doing. And this is the time for us to collectively to do the right things. That's why I started mantra with the Bhadram and then ended with the Sarva. Bhadram means that we all of us need to be allow ourselves to think. We all of us need to allow ourselves to see. We all of us need to be allow ourselves to speak. Problem is we don't speak, we don't talk, we don't communicate. Through Dharma Samvad, our panelist and our guest, we all of us will be focused on to how to speak, how to address the issue, how to control ourselves. Hinduism believe non-violence. Every single person in planet Earth shouldn't be abused with whatsoever reason. And particularly child, we must think about before we do anything to the child, we should think about the Bhagavan. At a one stage, Bhagavan can forgive us for something else, but Bhagavan will not forgive us with the abuse of the child. We cannot ask forgiveness by doing that crime of the abusing the child. And we need to teach this message to everyone. By ending this, now my technical team as well as our guest will be explained to you in details. So watch this show. Share as much as you can right now in your all platforms, WhatsApp, Facebook, everywhere, to bring the awareness into the all in this world. Thank you. I think Yashika Ben will take over from me, and then our guest will be explained to you in details.
I apologize. Namaste. Welcome to the show, everyone. And it's back this week with commemorating the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children. And we have a lineup of many prominent South African Hindus in the country to share with us on this very important topic today, which is, can we stop child abuse? It is prevalent in South Africa and globally that the increase in the rate of child abuse has become such an important part of our life today that even health workers, medical specialists, as well as psychologists are not able to contain the alarming rate of the abuse that is coming into our country. And without further ado, I would like for us to go to the video of our minister who has indicated how and why we need to flatten the curve of child abuse in the world. Tech, please play video 1.
We have seen the close connection between COVID-19 pandemic and the further rise of all kinds of violence against women and girls. We called it the shadow pandemic. We've also seen two types of response. There's a response for citizens who present with this life-threatening illness, and another response for those who come for help with a life-threatening partner. We've seen all hands on deck for the fight against the pandemic with incredible compassion and selfless service by health workers, ordinary people, governments providing changes overnight, shutting borders, massive fiscal injection, industry breakthroughs, and protection protocols backed by determination. We need a comparable amount of determination and effort to be given to the global fight to end violence against women and girls, so that we can see results and flatten the curve of this destructive shadow pandemic. Like health workers, workers in the justice system, such as judges, prosecutors, police, social workers, and leaders need to step it up.
Thank you and welcome back. So you've heard the messages. It's for us to step it up. And I think it becomes critical in this time in our history and in our country to take the space and to go forward. So joining me in today's studio is attorney and Hindu worker Raksha Singh Semnarayan. We also have with us Nikhil Deeplal. He's also an attorney who will be sharing with us some of the rights and the constitution in which the rights of the children are being protected. We also have Pakshini Govender. She's a young attorney and also a social media specialist and who's been able to watch what is happening in the social media space. We are also joined by a young author and who's actually an engineer by profession, and she is Sarvadharsha, and she's going to share with us her views and her stories of why she found that the incidence of abuse has become so high, and she shares with us some poetry later on in the program. So again, we know that the scourge of the pandemic has taken over the intensity of government in order to provide opportunity for people to be healed from COVID-19. But within the space of COVID-19 has seen this alarming increase of violence amongst children and violence amongst women. So what is the nature of child maltreatment in the world today? And how do we understand child rights? Well, here's another video that is coming up to share with you on how we can look at the rights of children. Video 2, please.
You may have heard about child abuse and neglect. Do you know what they mean? They include acts of commission and omission and are preventable. Child abuse and neglect include acts of commission and omission. What are acts of commission? Acts of commission are deliberate and intentional. However, harm to a child might not be the intended consequence. Some examples include physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse. What are acts of omission? Acts of omission are the failure to provide for a child's basic physical, emotional, or educational needs, or to protect the child from harm or potential harm. Some examples include physical neglect, emotional neglect, medical and dental neglect, educational neglect, inadequate supervision, exposure to violent environments. About 1 in 7 children experience some form of child abuse or neglect in the last year. But we know the problem is underreported. That's why a consistent definition is so important. The good news is, we can stop child abuse and neglect before it starts. What can we do? We can work together to promote safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments so all children reach their full potential. Some strategies to consider include strengthen economic supports to families, change social norms to support parents and positive parenting, provide quality care and education early in life, enhance parenting skills to promote healthy child development, intervene to lessen harms and prevent future risk. These strategies help create families, neighborhoods, and communities where every child thrives.
Thank you, Tech. We've seen a little bit about the messages that is coming loud and clear from organizations throughout the world, in particular the United Nations. But what can we do as Hindus and the Hindu community in order to promote awareness of the scourge of violence? Joining me today is Raksha Singh Semnarayan, who is an attorney at law, but also a Hindu Kar Sevak and a member of the World Hindu Foundation. Namaste, Raksha ji, and welcome to the program.
Namaste, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay.
So what can we do as a society, Rakshaji, to bring awareness to the scourge and to stop abuse of children? Children are supposed to be our most protected assets as Hindus, as people of the global community. And they also represent power in our lives. But the scourge has taken away the most fundamental aspect of our children's lives. What can we do to bring more awareness?
Yashika ji, I didn't hear you properly, but I heard a bit. You're asking about the COVID surge and its link to child abuse, and what can we do?
Yes, to bring awareness to child abuse.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Yashika ji. So, my perspective is that firstly, we cannot look at child abuse or any sort of social issue in isolation. This needs to be looked at in the context of what society has been going through as a whole. So the point is that people were made to be under isolation. The majority of South Africans live in very small dwellings with very few amenities or none, like running water, access to electricity, and during access to proper nutrition, access to places where they can get any sort of medical help and so forth. But they were forced to live together in isolation. Together with that, there was emotional and psychological strain because people were unemployed. These are factors that contributed to the abuse of children and the abuse of women. I'm not saying providing and saying it's an excuse, but these are factors that could be considered that are key to it. So if we don't address these key human security issues, these issues that were promised in the Constitution as rights to human beings, it's hard to look at child abuse in isolation. What needs to happen, and I strongly believe, and I'll deal with it later, is that it takes a society to grow a child. And many people have come from other areas, rural areas, to townships to cities without an infrastructure, without the support of families. And often children were left in the care of strangers or were forced to live with extended family and extended friends in small dwellings. And these also contributed to child abuse, and the children had no recourse to go and seek help or protection. So these are the factors that were key, that were key factors. And if we don't look at the root cause, it's very hard to understand how or find solutions to issues like child abuse.
Absolutely. I think that's very profound because the lack of infrastructure of people moving from, townships into big cities, there's no support systems, there's no mechanisms, also render, children, victim to the environment. Rakshaji, on another point, we speak about Hindu Dharma and the great philosophies that we've had and the wonderful, stories that we see in our scriptures. And it also holds true that a family plays a pivotal role in the life cycle of our faith and also in our community. Children are revered like gods. They are also hold the key to the next generation. So how does Hindu Dharma focus on children?
So this is a very good point, Yashikaji, and thank you for asking me this question. The first point of reference is that we believe that there's divinity in each living soul, plants, animals, children. We also believe in the concept of samskara, and we believe souls have chosen a specific family to live through their karmic journey. The third concept that I want to speak about is the whole concept of brahmacharya. And that concept of brahmacharya before 18 talks about abstinence and looking more and focusing on the energies of divinity of the child. And the reason for that is it places a duty on society to protect children, right? So, what has happened though is that we've moved from that concept to Western world where there's been a blurring of boundaries. Firstly, we cannot look at or respect the divinity within each one of us, firstly. Secondly, because people are experiencing their own suffering, they fail to see that they have a duty of care to children and minors because their minds are so busy looking for the next plate of food, employment, and so forth. So, back to what I've said earlier. So, Hinduism gives us brilliant examples. We need to go back to basics and try and look for divinity and see what's our role in society. And also, the point is that if a person cannot find this protection and solace in a family, they had an extended family go to go to go seek help from. That extended family system has diminished and they have nowhere to go to for protection. So we need to look at how we've fragmented from our initial values and we've come to seek for material things, and that has affected the pillars of society. So, yeah, those are key issues that we need to consider.
Thank
And
you so much.
also some other thing. There were mothers and other people that protected children. Mothers need to work these days. Fathers need
Absolutely.
to work these days. Children become vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely. In the passage of time, we realize that these hurtful attitudes have caused so much of harm to children and that we need to learn to be better parents. What are your thoughts?
Yes, we need to be better parents, but you know this whole analogy that when you're in the plane, what you expected to do first is put your own mask on. So, if we are not better people and stronger individuals, if we do not have peace within, if our faith is not strong, how are we going to be better parents? So, we need to be better individuals first. In becoming better parents, what is required of us is to almost shift in our thinking and think about the society that we are bringing children up in, reaffirm the values at home, but also become more understanding. If I'm sending my child to a school with Western values, if her peers are.
Sorry, Raksha, we're losing you a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Can you hear me now? Yes. If she's exposed to things, she cannot be alienated from the society that I put her in. So, or him in. So I need to equip her with the values and tell them how to deal with a changing society, with living in a changing society, but keeping their values firm. And also, what's required is for us to listen more and not impose our wishes without listening and without not compromising on our values, but telling our kids how they need to protect themselves and how they need to adapt with keeping their values strong. And we are so
Absolutely.
busy. We've got social media, we've got work, we've got that. We don't listen enough. Listen for the sake
Very,
of
very
listening,
true.
not for the listening for the purpose of imposing.
Exactly. Listen for not imposition. Listen for the sake of listen. And I think that's a very good lesson that we can learn about listening. Thank you, Rakshaji. I have to move on to my other guests, but thank you very much for sharing those profound messages. We have Panditji in the studio today, and I'd like to maybe pose a question to Panditji, if he's still there, on the law of karma. You know, they often say that the Hindu concept of karma provides a religious understanding of those who seek help to both the perpetrators and those who are the victims of violence. Can you share a little bit about the law of karma, Panditji?
So, yes, I go to that, but before that, I was listening the Rakshaben and two things came out in my mind. The two quote, one was the Arbindo, Sri Arbindo. What is a God after all? So, like in our Hindi, सब बोलते हैं ना कि बालक भगवान का स्वरूप है. So he put nicely that what is the God after all? So is an eternal child playing an eternal game in an eternal garden. So first is the children are the form of the gods, which is always we talk about from the birth to the always to Pravitratman. And then I was looking, then I found the Nelson Mandela quote where the true character of a society is revealed in how it treats its children. So that's when you say society, same time we said household is also revealed how the family or the parents to treat their children. It's that how I put that quote. Look at karma, whether you it's either sankalpa. I put this other way. The sankalpa, every prayer you do, sat karma, good karmas, you have to do sankalpa. You have to say it, what we're doing, what day to day in Hindu calendar, and who's sitting for puja and whom you're offering prayer. But I always mention there that asat karma, the bad karmas, you don't have to mention. Whether you're doing in the closed room or whether in the closed doors is always there. The karmas goes behind you. So you do the close, because most of the things child abuse happen at the closed doors, you know. And that
Always
perspective, the
behind
karma
closed doors and
behind the
always
behind the
hidden.
doors.
Yes.
So somebody think that no one watching us, but remember, God is the anu kanamasme baas hai mera. So in every atoms, He's there, and He watching you. So dharma perspective, the karma is there. But beside that, you know, sanskar, you know, in Hinduism, sanskar start from the third month of the pregnancy. From there the sanskar start to give to the pregnant women by the pandit ji come and they chant the mantras, and all the father also do the prayers. And then 7 month they do the sanskar, Shriman sanskar, where they also give the knowledge of the dharma. Now this sanskar is means you giving the proper you know, educated child in a society by giving sanskar. And another thing is in our Gujarati said, kuwama hoy to hawarama ave. So if it's water in the well, then it's going to come on the tap. So the sanskar, if is the parents or the grandparents have, the parents carry, and then is go to the children. So this sanskar is very important to give to your children, because remember, their children one day will become parents, and whatever you're giving them today, it will pass to their children. So this is the way we must, because I noticed that our Hindu community don't speak about our problems. They don't come and share our the problems, like child. If you ask anyone the child abuse, there is no, actually is a zero. That's answer will come zero. There is no child abuse. But as a priest, I have come across many families that there is problems, and then sometime we go and make peace. Sometime I go 2 o'clock night. In 2018, I have to go to for 2 o'clock night when the child phoned me and said, Guruji, you have to come and help me. And I have to explain, go to tell the parents that you can't kick out a child at 2 o'clock night, So these are problems are in our community. We have to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much, Panditji. We now move to Nikhil Deeplal, who is an attorney at law. He's a strategist in South Africa, and he's also involved with the Hindu community. I also have with me in studio is Pakshini Govender, and she's going to share some of her thoughts as well on the issues in terms of the constitution and social media and how this has impacted, our framing of issues on abuse in the country. So welcome to both of you. Namaskar, Nikhil ji. Thank you very much for joining us. So Nikhil ji, thank you. Under the Constitution of South Africa's Bill of Rights, all persons have the right to have their inherent dignity protected and respected. And we also have a right to life. This bill makes provision for children, stating that all children have the right to appropriate care and access to social services and to be protected. Yet, we are in a country that has seen an escalation of violence. In fact, 24,000 children are sexually abused, and this is alarming. So when we look at this and we look and examine our own Hindu community, why are we not aware, and why are we turning a blind eye to such atrocities?
Thanks, Yashika ji. Yashika ji, I'm not so sure that we're not aware. I think we're aware that these things happen, and I think everyone knows it happens. I think the difficulty arises is that the spaces in which they happen are such private spaces that intervening is the difficult part. Child abuse generally happens, as Panditji said, behind closed doors, within the home of someone that the child would know. And intervening into those kind of spaces where the difficulties arise, because generally there's a societal concern that, well, that child is going to be subject to more abuse if we intervene because of the community we live in. So the answer to that solution is it's not directly about the things of how we intervene, but it's about the societal changes that we need to bring about. Because if society becomes comfortable, this is not acceptable, these people are not part and should not remain part of our society, then society can deal with it. But as long as we take that approach that, well, we'll deal with it at some point and we'll keep the child quiet because this is a respected elder in the community, that's where the problem sits. And that's the change that I think needs to happen.
Okay, thanks, Nikhilji. What are your thoughts on the same issue?
Thank you, Yashika-ji. I agree with Nikhil on this, but also have a slightly differential opinion on it. Our constitution specifically states at section 28(2) that the best interests of the child are of paramount importance when in every matter concerning the child. By these very words, it is abundantly clear that we have and are continuing to fail our children, and miserably so. Within our community specifically, we would not need stats to show us that most cases of child abuse and neglect go unreported. And I believe, and I think it's safe to say, that the majority of us within the Hindu community believe that it's not our business to intervene in other families' personal matters. And therein lies the issue. We need to mind our own business. Why should we be talking about other people? It's not right. It's not within our traditions. How a person chooses to discipline their child is their own prerogative. However, as I had mentioned about the Constitution, it gives us, each individual South Africa, the right to do this when it comes to our children, because they are not just one person's child, they are the children of South Africa.
Absolutely, well said. And I think if we do not take ownership of the African indigenous saying, as well as the resonance of that in Hinduism, that it takes a village to raise a child, then actually we have not utilized our duty effectively. Nikhilji, what are some of the current policies, the government policies, that are there to safeguard our children against abuse?
So, Yashikaji, I think the overarching thing that we would use is the Constitution, which Pakshini has read from now. But there's also the Children's Act, which is really the basis and gives life to the constitutional provisions around the rights of the child. So that act really does set out a lot of things and protects the child, and goes into the nitty-gritties of how and when children's rights are affected and what needs to be done. We also have a national action plan, which, if I'm not mistaken, was passed in about 1996, that sets out and speaks to not only does it speak to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, but also speaks to general global conventions on the rights of the child. So that sets out quite in detail the way these things should be dealt with. The last thing I think which is interesting is the Sexual Offenders Registry, which came about in 2007, and that most people don't know about. But I think that's an important part of being in a society where we have people working in schools, hospitals, or where they have close contact with kids, and we're able to check whether they have the sexual history, and that really bars them from participating. So, but the problem with all of these things is they're beautifully drafted documents, they're nice to read. Implementation and the impact it has on society is a different story, and I think that's where the problem lies.
Yes, of course. It's always about implementation. We can have the most wonderful policy documents, but if we do not put them into practice, then it becomes a problem. One of the other issues that has come about is the issue of maltreatment. What is maltreatment? Nikki?
So Yashikaji, there is a definition. I'm going to get to it because I want to give you the right definition. But all forms of physical and or emotional ill treatment, sexual abuse, neglect or negligent treatment, or commercial or other exploitation resulting in actual or potential harm to the child's health, survival, development, or dignity in the context of a relationship of responsibility, trust, or power. So that is how the World Health Organization would define maltreatment, and that applies to anyone under the age of 18 years old.
Absolutely. So it's quite frightening to understand that the perpetrator can actually be very close around us and within families, and that it becomes not easy for anyone to identify these perpetrators because they're part of your social life, they could be in your community. And it's a very difficult thought to actually consider and even conceive. So how then do we safeguard our children from such perpetrators, Nikhilji, and also to Pakshiniji?
I don't know if Pakshiniji wants to go first on that one.
All right. Okay.
One of the biggest tips that I could give parents.
Yashikaji, I think you're muted.
Oh, okay.
Apologies for that. I was saying that one of the biggest tips that I can share is, given the fact that we are in a very digital age at the moment, and any responsible, well, any adult with a child in their life that they love and have affection towards, tend to want to show this kid off. And what we tend to do is then post a lot of pictures on social media of our outings and the day-to-day activities of the child. And while it's very cute, and the majority of us look at these and feel fulfilled, and our hearts are warmed by these loving acts of these children, there are also, well, the dark side of the internet, where sexual offenders and other people, for example, possible human traffickers, are watching these every move. It depends on your privacy settings a lot of the time, but most of the time it doesn't, because we all have that opportunity to share. And This makes it easier for people to track the child, your whereabouts and movement, and it makes it very easy to put yourself in this person's life, and then putting yourself in that child's life, which obviously leads to a whole host of issues.
Absolutely. So it becomes a far deeper social problem than we've imagined. And we've actually allowed the nature of social media to overtake us. But I'll come back to that question, in a bit. Nikhilji, how can we use the law effectively to bring perpetrators to book?
So I think we need to appreciate that the systems exist. And I think the problem in the South African context is that we've given up in the system because there's high stats, people think the police are inefficient. There's a whole lot of problems around that. But the only way the law can help us is if we try to use it. And that means actually approaching the police station. And I know people say, well, what's the point? But it does matter. So reporting these kind of things has a significant impact, right? So the second you report this, the police have a duty to investigate, and that's something that citizens have to follow up and make sure that happens. One, if these crimes are committed, it has to be prosecuted too. But the effects of these processes has a deep effect on the offender. The fact that you're unable to work in certain spaces, the fact that you have a criminal record for these kind of things, it does affect your life, and it does have a deterrent effect. So despite the fact that we might want to believe that, look, the system is failing us, I think you've got to approach the police when these things happen. We've got to make communities aware that these are the recourses and legal recourses that we have. And then also we've got to support people when these cases go to court. It's really important, I think, when sexual offenders being tried or when there's matters against children, that the community show up. Because standing in a witness box or having a case that you've got to go and testify in is not an easy thing for any person. And I think it's important that communities show up and show support and solidarity to those who are most affected by these kind of things.
Thank you, Nikhilji. I think that was absolutely important. And I think people need to know the law and they need to understand why it is critical for them to report such instances. Pakshiniji, I just wanted to ask you, are there tips that we need to know to identify victims who have been subject to abuse? What are some of the telling points that we can actually look for and arm our mums and dads and grandmothers when we come across victims of abuse?
I will repeat this word again. Any responsible adult, be it your extended family, friends, or teachers, the signs for abuse are usually easily identifiable, given that they are the usual signs. Some of these usual signs are drastic behavioral changes. A child may either act out or become withdrawn or reclusive. Grades start to drop. The child may seem uninterested or inattentive during class or generally. There may be visible physical indicators like welts, scratches, and scars that indicate that there might be some self-harm involved. If a child was once active and enjoyed sports and participating in physical education, etc., and now they've suddenly started to forget their kits or refuse to participate, not wanting people to see them, their peers, to see them in the change rooms, etc. It's usually because they're trying to hide bruises or any kind of physical injuries that are easily hidden by a school uniform, but not necessarily hidden by a sports kit.
Wow, so that is amazing, and I think that's a really serious issue that we need to take into account. Nikhilji, one of the issues that, from what Pakshini has just said, is that there are different ways in which we can identify, but there are also things that are so covert that we are not able to respond to, quite easily. So, in terms of that, social media itself is also very, very critical for us to examine. And I'm going to ask Sadarsha a little bit later to share with us her views. But from your point of view, do you think the social media is a can play a critical role in creating awareness, but at the same time, it also needs to have some kind of digital laws that can, stop perpetrators?
Yeah, so Yashika ji, I think that's a very important question. I think the bottom line is we live in a world where social media is probably one of the most important things in life. Young people, most people actually, don't read books anymore. The books behind me are a thing of the past. We want to look at a Snapchat, we want to watch a TikTok video, we want to look at Instagram, we want information quickly. And although we can use that medium for the wrong information and to kind of give messages that are bad, we can also use it to kind of send a good message. And then we have to use it as a tool of education for young people. And I think that's the potential that social media has. It has the potential to do harm, but it also has the potential to really educate people about what is cyberbullying, how to control your social media pages, what to post. So there is a benefit of it, and it really just does depend on people like ourselves to post that kind of content, because not everyone's going to do that. But on the flip side, social media is an extremely dangerous place. Cyberbullying is a reality that exists for most young people, and we need to be mindful of that. And I think we need to start having conversations with young people about the fact that, look, if you're not on social media, it's not a train smash. But if you are, these are the realities that come with it. The fact that your digital footprint never, ever is erased in reality, it might be a different story, but it's always on the web. And that could have a deep, dark consequence for one. And I think that's something really important for young people or any person to think about. So the fact that one picture that you could have sent innocently could be blown out of proportion and could really destroy your life is something that people need to be more cognizant of. But the only way to do that is to understand that, look, social media is there for a purpose, and what you decide to use it for will determine the kind of impact it kind of has on your life. So if you're posting videos and things that can't really be taken out of context, you're fine. But the second people use it and cross those boundaries and kind of, share stuff that they shouldn't be sharing, you're opening yourself up to unnecessary risk. And that is the problem, I think.
Wow, thank you so much. I think this deep dark web is a problem for everyone. And I think if we do not watch and guide our children in terms of the use of the cell phones, I'm sure how many people have cell phones in their homes and how many people have 2 cell phones each is a problem. Thank you very much. And thank you, Pakshini, and thank you, Nikhilji. There's a question I'm going to ask Pakshini in a while, and that's to do with educators and children. But we'll come to that in a little while. My next guest is Swadharsha Siulal. She's 27, and she's recently been given a wonderful award where she's come third in a writing competition. So from civil engineering to writing, fantastic! Congratulations, Swadharsha.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. So you've written a beautiful anthology called Yellow Roses.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for and what is amazing is that one of the prizes of this competition is that you are going to be a published author in the next couple of weeks, and you're having a launch in December. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
So
and I
my
think that's
inspiration was to create awareness and spread messages.
That's beautiful. And I think one of the key things for me and why I was so interested in the fact that you wrote this anthology, it's a book dealing with women, it's dealing with child abuse, it's dealing with issues of pain and suffering, and it's stories from what you have been relating to in your own life and in people that you've come across. So share with us a little bit about this inspiration.
So I have been writing poetry since high school. As for me, it became an escape for emotions. In life, there are multiple struggles faced by our brothers, sisters, children, and even our animals. And when one thinks about these struggles, it is very depressing. I use poetry to put my emotions onto paper whenever I felt down about these issues. I was encouraged by my mom to enter the short story competition held by Crest Publishers, and I decided to write a piece on women and child abuse. The competition was during lockdown, and to some of us, working from home was a dream come true, but to others, it was a living nightmare as they were trapped in a vicious cycle of being beaten mentally, physically, and emotionally. My inspiration was to create awareness and spread messages on these challenges. I use my poetry to express the voices and cries of the unheard souls. From a younger age, I always envisioned my poetry being published. After placing third in the Crest Publishers competition, I was further encouraged by Kelly, the director of Crest, to put my poetry into a book, which is now being published. In my anthology, I touch on abuse, especially emotional abuse, as most people think abuse is only physical. A few poems highlight women and child abuse. There's also poetry on poverty, life, failure, love, and extended motivational messages. I could not think of a better time for the anthology to be released than during the 16 Days of Activism. The date of the launch will be on the 13th of December, and anyone on social media can stream the event, which will be live on my Facebook and Instagram pages.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's sometimes it's through pain and challenges that we are able to create and become the most creative at that point in time. But it's also poetry gives us a sense of release. Art gives us a sense of release. And I was in a situation a few weeks ago where a young person was sharing some of the difficulties and challenges they were facing in just an ordinary household. And in 15 minutes later, they had done the most beautiful art piece. And I think that's stunning. Tick, there's a wonderful cover page of this book. Can you please share it while I ask Darsha the next question? So, Darsha, we've just been talking now with Nikhil ji and Pakshini ji, and they are our lawyers. We're talking a little bit about the dark web or social media. What are your thoughts as a young person? Does social media have a positive or a negative role to play? And you are in it. You are working with young people all the time. They're never looking up. They're always looking on their cell phones. So, what are your thoughts around this?
I think there are both pros and cons to social media. The negative aspect is that it is very dangerous, as it is easy to find out a lot of personal details about an individual, which poses a threat when we live in an age where human trafficking is so dominant. I also know many individuals who fell victim to social media bullying and verbal abuse, which led to depression and sometimes even suicide. The positive aspects is that there are a few platforms for victims to easily reach out and get help, as well as to be encouraged by stories of others who were brave enough to share them. I feel that the social media of children should be closely monitored by parents or caretakers to ensure the safety of the child.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. And I'd like you to read a little bit about from your poem, from your book, just a passage or two. That would be lovely for us to hear because you're such an inspiration to young people today.
Thank you so much. I actually have a poem that I'd like to read on this platform.
Sure.
As humans, we kill with no remorse. These disagreeable realities we endorse. We ignore when we see an illicit action. Our concern we only give a fraction. If the little girl was cared for, even with the minimum care that a yellow rose will receive, one can imagine the encouraging pathway this would conceive. Yet, in her story, death played the leading character, taking the final bow in her theater. Thank you.
That's absolutely brilliant and absolutely wonderful. So, everyone, you heard it. It's 13th of December. She's going to launch a book. Please join her and support youth in the country, support creativity, and also let's nurture our children because they are our most precious possessions. I'm going to come back to our guests in studio in a while. And I would like you all to watch the next video. It's deeply poignant, and it's very, very important for us to understand some of the pain that young people go through. So take video 3, please.
When I was younger, I didn't disclose the abuse that had happened by my grandfather. I had never been educated that what he had done was wrong. I actually did not know that what he was doing was wrong. Inside, I felt awful for the experiences that I went through. And I was ashamed to say that that had happened to me. Even though I hadn't received any education, I somehow just inside knew that what was happening wasn't appropriate, wasn't right.
It's very hard to tell anyone. Think about how when a kid breaks something of a parent's and they don't want to tell, they try to hide it the best they can because they feel like they would be in trouble. My first uncle, I was 4, and he told me he would kill my family and take me away, and I was convinced, and now it's just, I can't tell anyone. And my second uncle, I was 12 years old. I was older, but I just still had this fact that he convinced me, your mom's not going to believe you. And I know my mom. She doesn't listen to me.
I really didn't feel like I had the confidence in anybody to trust them with something as private as that. I think had I had confidence in someone, I would have been more likely to have shared with them what I was going through.
I kind of wanted to avoid having to tell someone something that I felt was my fault and embarrassing because I let him do it to me. So I didn't feel like I had anyone to blame but myself. I just didn't have that trust in people that they would get it.
I think that was deeply poignant, extremely sad. And also, one should note the repercussions of what happens to a child when many years later, relationships get affected, people get affected, society gets affected. And they say when it starts at the home level, the entire world gets impacted. So we need to take that dharmic duty and our consideration to all of humanity, because we are not in isolation. We are all interconnected. Rakshaji, I would like to ask you, how do we become gender activists, and how do we become activists in order to raise awareness around child abuse? Okay, I think she's just dropped off. There might be a technical issue. So I'm going to ask the question to Nikhilji. Nikhilji, how do we become activists?
So Yashikaji, it starts off with the small things. It starts off, and I know it's easy for young people to be what they call clicktivists, right? So it's a like and it's a share, and it really is more than that. I think it starts off with the small things. It starts off by when we're at the dinner table and someone says to a woman something inappropriate, or someone makes a comment which is sexist. It starts off by addressing it there, within our own homes, within our own family, our parents, our siblings, our uncles and aunts. That's where it starts. Activism doesn't start by protesting William Nicol. It really does start in the home, where you take a stand for a particular thing and you change these kind of things. And we're talking about children, but the gender roles within the home, of the woman washes the dishes and cooks the supper while the man watches TV. These kind of things are the things that need to start changing. And that, to be brutally honest, activism starts at that level. That is what we're going to think about. Yeah.
I think that's amazing. I think we need to become spiritual warriors like our youth, today in our show, as well as you guys who actually are the advocates and become, part of advocacy campaigns in order to bring awareness of the scourge in our country. Pakshini-ji, one of the key things affecting us is kids and kids at school. So how do we create an environment where teachers, become far more aware of what is happening to the children around them?
you will find that this is coming from someone who was once a student, but also as a child of an educator of 41 years. My father, who is very much an activist, has experienced situations in his school where and in his career where children have come forth, been brave enough and empowered by people in the school, not just the teachers, but support staff like the guidance counselors who play the most prudent role in protecting a child's rights because, as we know, kids spend most of their day in the school environment. Now, guidance counselors have been equipped with the skills and knowledge and training to see through any smoke screens and are able to tell and see the signs of abuse much better than we are because the signs aren't usually usual indicators like I previously mentioned. Some are far more deeper within, lie in emotional abuse, like Sarv Darsha has mentioned. And children should be encouraged to visit their guidance counselors during their lunch breaks and their free periods so that they can again be encouraged and empowered to speak out and seek the necessary help. I know of a lot of children from when I was in school, from before then, who have actually managed to get out of abusive homes and situations. And that cycle was broken because of that. It also goes beyond the school. It goes to your extended family as well. You are, and as Nikhil has also said, we have the law. We need to use it. So if you are concerned that a child has been subjected to abuse or neglect, you are more than within your rights to call up the police and ask them to conduct a wellness check. You are also encouraged, if you see parents doing some dodgy parenting skills, you are encouraged to ask them or inform them that there are other manners in which to discipline your child. So those are just some of the things that I think are important.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. And,
Thank you.
I would like to say thank you to all the guests that have taken time to be with me today, but also with our Hindu community to say that we need to stop the scourge of child abuse. Watch your attitude, watch how you are engaging with young children, and also look at new forms of discipline. Bakshini, is there a quote that you'd like to share before we end the
There
show?
is, in fact, given the fact that it is 16 years of activism against violence against women and children, for the women or any children that are watching, I would like to quote Paramhamsa Yogananda. He says, "Don't say, karma, karma, my karma has brought me into this situation. You must exert. Through devotion, through penance, through seva, you are able to work out your karma in this life. You must do purushartha, do tapas, penance, concentrate, purify, meditate. Don't become a fatalist. Don't yield to inertia. Don't bleat like a lamb. Roar, om, 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 like a lion of Vedanta."
Wow, that's absolutely beautiful and brilliantly said. Roar, be proud of being Hindu and roar with Om. When you have Om in your heart, everything else will work. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Let's be strong. Let's save our children and let's love them and embrace the spiritual darlings, as in the words of great Swami Sahajananda and Swami Shivananda ji. Hari Om. Namaskar. Thank you very much.